Hi, thanks for coming by. I thought I would take a few minutes here because you obviously have an interest in sharing with you a little bit about my school program. What I do when I come to a school, how a typical day looks, a little bit about me and what I tell kids about the power of poetry, and also to share with you some of the extra things I can do while I'm at your school, and also next steps, things that you can do to bring me to your school and to make sure that when I leave your school, you're smiling broadly and you're asking each other, how can we get him back? And that's my goal of this video, and it's my goal when I come to your school to make sure I meet your standards, your highest standards. I work really hard to make sure that we have a wonderful time together, and that's been my track record so far. So I have the best job in the world. I've been at it for 14 years, and I love it. I love all aspects of it. I love the travel. I love visiting schools. I love especially working with kids to help them find their voices, to make sure that they can think about their word choice, think about looking at their world as closely and sharply as they can, and then putting down in a poem things that they feel are important in their lives, which is great, and it really works well. So I do about 60 schools a year. It comes to about 100 days I'm on the road. And I would say about 40% of those schools are multi-day. So I spend more than a day at a school, sometimes 4 days or more in terms of a residency. And I would say probably 60 to 70% of my programs are repeats at schools that I've been to before. Often schools will have me back every year, either to see the whole school or to see a particular grade, which I love. And I really do have the best job. I'm a teacher and a writer, and both those things complement each other, and they inform each other. I couldn't be a writer without being a teacher, and I couldn't be a teacher without the writing piece. I have this lovely opportunity to write mostly in the summers and winters, and then I get to travel in the spring and fall, and it works out really well for me. So I love writing, I love playing with words, and I love, as I said, I love working with kids. It's a passion of mine. So what I tell kids, actually, is that I wasn't much of a writer or a reader when I was a kid. And it's kind of interesting, but I was fascinated with wordplay. I loved Dr. Seuss. I loved rhyming poems, mostly the ones that I could find. But I also really loved song lyrics, and I loved to listen to the fun wordplay and rhymes and rhythms of lyrics, which was, and I still do, which is pretty great. So I discovered, and I share these with kids, 6 principal gifts that poetry allows or gives to us, and they apply directly to the workshops that I do. The first one, of course, is that poems have looser rules. That in writing a poem, a child can be flexible, and they love that. They can not even sometimes use punctuation or capital letters. They can make their poem have a shape. Visual learners love that stuff, and musical learners love the rhythm and rhyme of it. But the freedom of writing something small and having a little more flexibility to it makes a huge difference. I love that poems can help us see the world with new eyes. It's almost like we got new eyeballs in our head, I tell kids, because they can look at things differently. All of a sudden, even if they're not familiar with metaphor and simile, they start using metaphor and simile, comparing things, so that it makes these images come to life and describe things more beautifully. Poems are super great at sharing what's in our hearts. We open up our hearts in a poem to share things that are really important. I help kids talk about things they do well or places they go to feel safe. We write poems about these things, and we try to show and not tell how we feel about these things. So poems are great at opening up your heart. Ralph Fletcher, I think, once said that poems are like giving blood. They go directly from the heart of the writer into the heart of the reader, which I think is a lovely thing. And I think it's a poet's job to share his or her heart. I think poems make you a better writer because, as I said, poems force you to really choose your words carefully. And I spend time in all my workshops making sure that kids appreciate the fact that every single word they write in their poems have to be as strong and surprising a word as they can put in there. I tell kids that poems make great presents. And then finally, of course, poems are fun to write. And that's what I love. I love the playfulness of poems, which is pretty great. So is there a typical day at a school program? Well, in a way there is. Everyone is a little bit different. I definitely make sure I do something different every time I come to your school if I'm there multiple times, and I keep careful track of what I do so when I'm seeing a group of kids for a second or third time, we do something fresh and new every time. But a typical day most often includes an assembly to start off, and it might be with just the grade I'm working with, or it might be the whole school. It's a way for me to introduce myself, to share some of my work, to laugh with the kids, and to write a poem together with the kids on my easel. You can see my easel is there. I have what I call my iEasel. It's pretty low tech, but I pretend it's high tech. And we write a poem together, and I reinforce some of the things that we're going to be talking about in the workshops and things that I do as a writer that are important that writers do. So I talk about that stuff, and it paves the way for what comes next. And I hope if I come to your school, you'll give me a chance to do some workshops, even if your principal focus is assemblies, because it's really my major passion to get kids excited. And a workshop is a pretty simple thing that takes about 45 or 50 minutes, sometimes shorter with younger kindergarten, first grade, but I can fill up 45 or 50 minutes easily. And I have what I call my menu, and I'll send that to you. It has the list of basic topics that I can cover in a workshop, including rhythm and rhyme, which I try to de-emphasize mostly with elementary age kids and middle school kids. We talk about metaphor and simile, figurative language in a workshop. We talk about writing from the heart in another workshop. And then finally we talk about revision and how we can choose our words and how we can juggle our words to make sure it's as strong as we can get it. And I make sure that revision comes into play in all of the workshops. So that's the focus. You can use my menu, or you can ask me to do something that you're focusing on in the curriculum, and I can absolutely do that, or make a hybrid of one of those things. So your job is to make a decision about what you'd like me to teach, and then to set up a schedule for me, and I can certainly help you with that. As far as my actual workshops go, I've developed a process that really works well for me, and I think you'll enjoy watching me do it. I think it works. Other teachers have said that it would be something that they could easily implement. And the way it works for me is, and I love, as I said before, about 45 or 50 minutes minimum. 55 an hour would be luxurious and lovely. With kindergartners, I'm usually 35 minutes or so. Because they get a little squirrely and squirmy, but I basically start a workshop by sharing a couple of poems, sometimes mine, sometimes other people's. I have some on my easel. I use my easel as a centerpiece at the beginning, and share a few poems, talk about the structure of a poem, what makes a poem a poem. I'll focus on a particular style of poem or type of poem and give the kids a couple of examples. And then I'll actually put on the wall some posters that have poems on them that were written by kids their age. And I'll put 3 or 4 poems up on the wall on posters. And I find that when they see those, it's lovely. They can get a sense that, yes, someone else my age has done this. I can do this too. So there's that sense of possibility. And then I invite them to write. And they write for about 10 minutes, usually not much more than that. And then I stop them. And most of them, because they're focused and quiet, have a pretty successful first draft in their hands. And then I'll stop and share a few of my own thoughts about revision, things I do as a writer when I'm revising a poem, and then I'll have them do a couple of small revisions to their poem, and then we'll share. And I invite everyone to share who wants to, and usually everyone does, even if it's just a piece of their poem. And then we celebrate at the very end by I give them all their poetic licenses, which is a lovely little bookmark that I give them that just congratulates them for their hard work. So that's the flow of a workshop, and as I said, I find it really works well. I change it around every year a little bit, and so no child will see me do the same thing twice. And we keep it fresh and we keep it fun. And definitely there's that sense of every child in the room succeeding and having a product at the end that they're really proud of, which is my goal. I try to do no more than 5 events during a day, 5 major events, and that's a lot for most authors. It's more than most authors do, and I love it. I love cramming a lot of things into a day with not much time in between, and I race from classroom to classroom, and then collapse, of course, at the end of the day like any good teacher. And you can set that up any way you want, that schedule. And 2 other things I love to add to that schedule, if you can fit them in, is a writer's lunch where I meet with 12 or maybe 16 or 15 kids that are particularly interested in writing. We'll get together during their lunchtime, not to include their recess, and talk shop, talk about our writing, what we do, where we do it, what kind of writing we like to do, what our favorite books are, ask each other questions. It's really a delightful time that I love to add to a poetry school program. And I also will provide for you, if you're interested, a teacher workshop. I add a little more to my fee if I'm doing it just for one day, but if I'm there for a couple of days at your school, I'm happy to throw it in. It's a chance for me to share with you, whether it's morning or afternoon, whether it's short, 30 minutes during a faculty meeting, or maybe an in-service 90-minute workshop. I'm happy to share with you things that I've discovered as a teacher and as a writer that work really well in sharing poetry with kids and teaching poetry to kids in your classroom. And I'll give you a bibliography and a list of things with some samples, things you can plug in and use right away. So that's another little add-on that I provide. A question you might have is about my fee, and I won't talk about it here, but absolutely get in touch with me. I also have this marvelous rep. Her name is Carrie McPhail, and Carrie's website is on my website in a couple of different places, and she can also provide you with information about what to do in terms of setting things up and what next steps are. Carrie helps sell books for me. You don't have to sell books, of course, but she gives the school 20% of the total sales back to you to help pay for my program, which is a pretty good deal. So Carrie does a great job as far as that goes for me. So that's my fee. The only other thing I ask for is a modest hotel if I'm in the area, unless I'm within half an hour, a couple hours of my home here in Vermont. But as long as I'm driving to within about a 5 or 6 hour radius of Vermont, I'm happy to drive and pay all of the travel fee and charges myself, food and all that stuff I cover. If I'm flying to you, and it doesn't happen very often, but if I'm flying to you, I definitely would love and ask for the schools in the area that I'm visiting, and I try to do several when I'm in your area. I'd love to have that airfare covered and also a rental car. And it doesn't cost that much if the schools are sharing it. So that works really well. So those are some of the questions you might have. If you need any references, I have tons of them. You can check on my website. Of course, there's that page called The Buzz, which has lots of quotes. And there's also so many schools I visited. I'm sure there are some near you where I can who I can refer you to for information. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share with you today. Please be in touch. I have the best job in the world. I haven't had a bad day at the office in 14 years, and I also haven't had a single, that I know of, a single bad review in 14 years from schools. I want you to be happy. I want you to leave, me to leave with you smiling and saying, when can we get him back? And I just, as you probably gotten a pretty good idea, I love what I do, and I want to make sure that when I come to your school, your kids are smiling and your kids are feeling accomplished. And at the end of every workshop and every visit, I want every child to have in his or her hand a poem that they're proud of and that they're working on and that they maybe could send to me once they get finished, because I love to encourage that. So thanks for your interest, and I hope I'll hear from you sometime soon. Bye-bye.